What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, we did have the nominations revealed for Game of the Year, and it pretty much did what we expected to, since it does it every year, which is create a bunch of conversation and controversy around the nominations themselves, what should be in, what shouldn't. But this time, it's a little different because one in particular certainly sticks out, and we're going to go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a certain remaster that's now making the rounds, bit of a rumor, but it did have me double take as to when the original game, how long ago it actually came out. And then we have the PlayStation 5 Pro going through a bit of a weird situation where actually certain games are getting the complete opposite effect from the $700 machine. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members of the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. They came out a couple of years ago, and now it appears they've broken a pretty substantial record in the franchise's history. We can see this posted up. This is over on The Gamer, who says, according to a report from Famitsu, the 8.3 million sales of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet in Japan have made them the best-selling domestic Pokemon games ever. Yes, that surpasses Pokemon Red and Green, or as we know it in the States, Red and Blue, and this represents the ending of a 26-year streak and is a testament to how widespread the Nintendo Switch is in Japan. That's pretty much my biggest read there, is just the Switch has sold an incredible amount of systems in Japan, like more than 33 million, 34 million or so now. And clearly Pokemon, incredibly popular in Japan. It just kind of goes hand in hand for a situation like this to happen, which, when you really look at it, does feel like Nintendo got away with one there when it comes to the Pokemon branding, holding up what was a below average effort when it comes to the technical side of a game release. It's just not very high quality in that regard. It's still an interesting and compelling idea for a Pokemon game that I hope they continue to pursue in the future, but not necessarily great here. However, the sales say otherwise. So there you go, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I mean, breaking records for Pokemon Red and Blue or Green, and Japan definitely taking over, and obviously shows that there's still a massive, massive following to Pokemon. Go figure. Also, we do have Stalker 2 coming out tomorrow, and I'm very interested about how this is going to shake out when it comes to reviews, but we haven't seen them just yet. And it turns out the embargo could actually be lifting a few hours before its release. This we can see posted. This is over on the Game Post, who says, according to a recent report from the senior editor at Insider Gaming, Grant Taylor-Hill, a now deleted post on his X account, it looks like the reviews for Stalker 2 will be published on November 20th, 2024, 9 a.m. Eastern, just 2 hours before the game officially hits shelves. And again, I'm very curious about this one. It's going into Game Pass, so I'm going to download it there to play it. But it's been a long time since Stalker released, it's definitely more than a decade ago, even maybe like 13 or 14 years ago. But still, this, in general, development behind the scenes has been rough, to say the least, on that one. However, some of the preview footage that's been going around in discussion, it does seem like it's a high-quality product, and I'm just interested to see how this exactly releases and how reviews go for it. But when you hear, okay, a couple of hours before it comes out, that's when reviews lift, does make it sound a bit dicey there, but I guess we'll see how things go tomorrow, just ahead of its release, how reviews go. Today's video is sponsored by boot.dev. Have you ever wanted to code, but after an hour thought, man, this is boring? Well, you're definitely not alone, since that pretty much sounds like me, which is why I think boot.dev is tackling this in a smart way, since they made it like a game. You can learn back-end web development from start to finish in Python and Go programming languages in an environment that feels like a captivating RPG. You complete quests, earn experience, level up, and even unlock achievements as you work to secure a spot on a global leaderboard. I think making the learning process fun is the key to mastering the fundamentals, since you actually want to log in and spend time with the material. Boot.dev has you writing a ton of code so you can get your hands on the keyboard and learn by doing. And let's face it, shipping projects is the only way to really learn. If you struggle with a certain concept, Boots is here to help. Oh, right, they're a powerful bear wizard who can walk you through any of the issues you might be running into. Is that college campus up the street have a bear wizard? Huh? Oh, maybe. I mean, it is 2024 after all.
This particular bear wizard, though, is an AI who will ask you questions to help you understand instead of just giving you the answer outright. Boot.dev has a 30-day no questions asked refund policy and a free demo of every course and its interactive features so you can try it out risk-free. Click the link in the description box and use my code SpawnWave to get 25% off your first month or even your entire first year if you choose the annual plan. Thanks to Boot.dev for sponsoring today's video.
And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Game Awards, as we had all the nominations that were revealed, and there are many of them. Like, there's a ton of categories, but I understand the big one people are looking towards is Game of the Year. That's basically what all the discussion has been, or at least 95% of the discussion coming out of the live stream yesterday for the event is about. So I think that's what we're going to focus on here. But actually, the podcast this weekend will go over more of the show, all the different categories for the most part, maybe barring like some esports stuff that we're not really caught up on, but we'll kind of go down the list and try to do our best to predict the winners of these different categories. However, there's a lot of discussion right now around Game of the Year because of one particular nominee. We can see this over on Jeff Keighley's official account, where he says the nominees for Game of the Year at the Game Awards. That's on December 12th. So yeah, less than a month away. And I know most people are tuning in clearly to see all kinds of new game announcements, but at the end of the show, it all comes together, big orchestra and stuff, big musical performance between the 6 entries, and then they tell us who wins Game of the Year for 2024. And in this case, the 6 entries are Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Metaphor ReFantazio, and Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. Now, I saw that, and I'm not shocked. Really, I mean, I did a video ahead of these nominations, and I said the reason that we saw that pop up in the frequently asked questions is probably because they forgot to post it, because any of the jury members who were submitting their nominations were told months ago that you could vote for a DLC or an expansion like Shadow of the Erdtree. It's just they never added it for some reason to their frequently asked questions until recently. And my best read on that is they saw the nominations come in and they were like, oh, we forgot to add that on the website. Let's go ahead and just kind of sneak that in there. But of course, the internet doesn't forget, and of course they notice pretty much everything, which they did here. Now, as for the 5 other nominees, that being Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Metaphor, I think for the most part, they're pretty solid. There's a lot of questions currently around Balatro and Black Myth Wukong, mostly because Wukong was a lower rated game compared to many, many others. Think of like Silent Hill 2, for example, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. But I think just the overall reach and widespread appeal there for Black Myth Wukong, it's selling a ton of copies. It's probably going to be more familiar with more people in the jury than any other game, actually. So it's probably one that just appeared on more nominations, just all these different ballots coming in. So to me, it makes sense why it's there. I did enjoy the game. I played all the way through it and got a kick out of it, so I have no problem with that. Balatro is interesting. That's another one that has widespread appeal, and I guess you could look at it as more or less the indie representation, but that's the one I think that drew the most ire outside of Erdtree, of course that being an expansion. Balatro just didn't seem to be known by as many people, and they looked it up and they're like, this is like a poker game. Well, yes and no. It's definitely a play off of that, but it's kind of like this roguelike style game that is genuinely unique. So in that aspect, yeah, I kind of understand why it's there. It's also rated highly at like a 90-something on Metacritic. So to me, the puzzle pieces for Balatro do fit, even though I understand people looked at that a bit sideways and said, why wasn't this big AAA 3D game there instead? But the elephant in the room surely is Shadow of the Erdtree, since it's downloadable content. It's an expansion. It relies on another game to launch. Not only that, it relies on you playing like 20 to 30 hours of that game, beating an optional boss, to then like start up the content. So to me, it is weird. Like it still doesn't really compute in my mind to be like, oh yeah, DLC, obviously that should get a vote. I understand it's like the highest rated thing this year, but it just feels like all we're doing is just voting for Elden Ring again. Because if you played Shadow of the Erdtree, it's just more Elden Ring. And actually, in some cases, I just think Elden Ring's better in general than Shadow of the Erdtree. Not that Erdtree is bad or anything. I think it's a very good expansion. But it felt like it was more of the same. with maybe, I think, weaker bosses or bosses that weren't set up as well as just Elden Ring. But I also think that could just be the effect of, wow, this is incredible. It's something I've never really seen before, with FromSoft leading the way here with innovation, to then just being more of that same game. But in my opinion, I just don't think it really lines up with the idea of Game of the Year, because I look at that as like new, standalone, original even Game of the Year, although I know we've had remakes in there in the past, but this just feels like something that would be better suited for its own category. Even if you had to mix in remasters to fill it out, I understand we don't always have enough expansions or DLC that will be deemed a certain level of quality, or as they say, price or newness. But I think you could mix stuff in much like you do with sports and racing. What about remasters or expansion or ongoing? Just an idea there, because this just seems like it sticks out like a sore thumb. It's like, okay, the other 5 I get, and then there's an expansion. And really going forward, that could muddy up the waters just in general. Let's say there is another expansion that shows up that's like a 91, and like Destiny 2 Final Shape was another one, right? That came out this year and people really liked it, and that was never even discussed, like, at all. So I do wonder if this is something that'll come up again, or if Shadow of the Erdtree is sort of that one-off because it's FromSoft, it's an Elden Ring expansion, it is sort of that, like, that highest of highs, it seems anyway, in the press, with the media, and in this case, the jury. But let me know what you think about this one when it comes to the idea of an expansion or DLC being nominated for Game of the Year. Next up, let's talk about a certain remaster that seems to be rumored to be happening here pretty soon, and just based on trends we've seen in gaming, it wouldn't shock me. Although I would once again go, why? But anyway, we can see this. This is posted up. This is over on Insider Gaming. It says the report comes from known leaker Special Nick Baker, who made the reveal during the latest episode of his Xbox Era podcast, saying, quote, "A lot of people will probably file this under this was obvious, but what I've heard is that we are getting a Dark Souls 3 remaster. One aspect was regarding resolution and frame rate that Nick believes will be more than the 1080p 60 FPS that the original game features." And I thought about this one a little bit, because I'm still in that mindset of, if it came out on the Xbox One and the PS4, it wasn't that long ago. But then I check and I go, man, it's been almost 9 years actually, because it came out in 2016. We're about to head into 2025. So we're close to being a decade old for a game. And it is kind of in that sense of, yeah, I guess that is sort of remaster territory. Back in the day, that would have been 2 generations just about. And then we get the remaster. So that like lines up. But the thing is, we still have these games playable on current hardware. So I wonder if this would be a situation of, they would release a patch that maybe you could buy for an extra like $10 or something, and it adds 4K 60, 4K 120 maybe, or just like 1440p 120, and just some extra graphical features, maybe new content to go along with it. And if that is the case, maybe they just do a full-on release, as is kind of being mentioned here. It's one of those situations that does sort of remind me of Horizon Zero Dawn. It's like, why are we doing this again? It already looks pretty good. Oh yeah, that's right. The game is getting close to a decade old now, and I guess they want to go back and retouch it a bit. Or if you're FromSoft, probably make a bunch of money once again to sell it all over again. Hopefully it's just a patch that they release for a slight upcharge, or maybe just none at all. But something tells me it's FromSoft. They've built this brand up to be quite valuable now, so why not cash in with something else like a Dark Souls 3 remaster? Still rumor territory, but it wouldn't shock me if this thing got announced next year, so we'll see. Next up, let's talk about the PlayStation 5 Pro, as there is a bit of a strange situation that's currently happening with this enthusiast system that you can buy for $700 without the disk drive. Now, myself, I've actually been going through many games still, and some of them are more noticeable than others, sure, when it comes to the differences, but it's still fairly subtle. I'm still waiting for that big game to come out from Sony day one, like Ghost of Yotei maybe, where it's like, okay, I get it. This makes sense to have the PS5 Pro 4 because it's visually impressive just across the board compared to the base PS5. However, some games right now seem to be taking a step back. Now, this was reported by Eurogamer, IGN, and then just a ton of posts on Reddit, which I started making a list of the different games that seem to be inversely affected by the PS5 Pro, as in, they're actually running worse or look worse on the stronger hardware with this new upscaling technique. Now, going down the list here, I do have Silent Hill 2, which seems to have flickering reflections and has caused quite a bit of frustration on the subreddit. Black Ops 6 has this shimmering effect sort of as you move the camera around. Almost looks like added aliasing to the image. Then Last of Us Part 2, in certain areas and levels, you have shadow flickering with reflections in, say, or even on like water, or just when you're looking against a light element that's reflecting off of you. Alan Wake 2 also seems to suffer from the shimmering issue, and Jedi Survivor has this odd situation where there's this strobing effect with like foliage and other things around you in the landscape. Digital Foundry says this, quote, "There are severe image quality concerns when elements like foliage interact with ray tracing. The end result is a strobing image quality downgrade that makes this pro patch difficult to recommend." And that's the part that's really strange, is these games are in some cases patched and it's having this effect. And as I was looking into this more and more, the belief is that PSSR, being still in its early stages, and I mentioned this previously, if you bought the PS5 Pro now, you have to understand you are an early adopter for PSSR that comes along with this system. So in some cases, you're just going to get a better experience. In others, you're going to get one that has growing pains. And it seems like we're just starting to discover more and more of those now. So I do think currently, if you're on the fence with the PS5 Pro, it's not exactly selling out or very difficult to get at this time. I just don't think it's a bad idea to wait for a bit and allow PSSR to evolve, which it seems like it should evolve quite a bit throughout the rest of this generation, as SDKs, from what I'm seeing, are constantly being updated in the background to go along with PSSR. And I think, say, in 6 to 12 months, you'll probably see most of these issues and even future ones we haven't really thought of yet kind of be worked out in the background. So yeah, very odd to get a more expensive premium system like this that touts all these fun bells and whistles, and then you turn the game on and it looks noticeably worse. So here's hoping some of these games can get this worked out through different patches and updates that, let's face it, we expect to have to download almost every other time we turn the system on. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a really cool surprise from Ubisoft when it comes to an older Assassin's Creed game, that being Syndicate, as today there is a free patch that's live that actually adds a ton of improvements. We can see this over on their site. This is the announcement where they say Assassin's Creed Syndicate will be able to run at a smooth 60 frames per second on PS5 and Xbox Series X and S starting on November 19th, thanks to a free patch coming to consoles. Additionally, players on Xbox Series X, PS5, and PS5 Pro will be able to experience the spectacle of Victorian London in full 4K resolution at 60 FPS, breathing new life into the game's cobblestone streets and massive industrial age structures. And this is a really fun surprise. Look, so Syndicate's been stuck even on like the Xbox Series X, where they touted things like FPS boost and auto HDR, and it came down to if the developer was going to go in and specifically toggle that on with the Xbox team, seemingly. So if they didn't, it was just stuck at 30, despite the system being more than capable of pushing it above that, and it was at 900p. So if you had played Syndicate months ago, a year ago or something, you're going to want to go back and check it out again with this free patch, especially if you own it and you've been curious about it. I mean, yeah, there's really, really cool stuff here from Ubisoft, and they have been using the PS5 Pro quite a bit in some of their releases. I think even the best, because they just eliminate all options and just give you the best image quality and best frame rate to go along with that, without you having to play around with toggles or sliders or the Pro version with RT or without RT or prioritize. None of that. So in this instance, I think I'm going to fire it up on the PS5 Pro to see how much better it looks, but I think going from 30 FPS, 900p, even 1080p, say on the PS4, up to 60 FPS and probably upscaled 4K, yeah, it's going to be quite substantial and noticeable. And you know what? It's actually a pretty fun Assassin's Creed, I think, worth revisiting. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, these are the 4 highest rated games for the Game Awards Game of the Year, which, again, YouTube, I can only do 4 options. They gotta fix that. Let's go up to 6 so I can just fit all of them in there next time. I asked which game takes the award. Astrobot, though, number 1, 41%. Then Final Fantasy VII Rebirth at 22, although it was right there with Metaphor at 21. And then Shadow the Erd Tree bringing up the rear with 15%, which I was going through the comments here and then even in Newswave and the Game Awards one. So many people are just against the idea of DLC and expansion in general being nominated. And I get it. It's just the optics. It just looks so strange compared to all the new releases that probably could have been in its place. There's a whole list people are putting out there, even things like Helldivers 2 or Space Marine 2. So a lot of stuff that Erdtree probably took that spot away from. But as I've mentioned many times, at the end of the day, it's a Game Awards show that most people tune in for brand new announcements, not necessarily who gets to go home with the trophy. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Matt, who says, picture of a PS5. This is an Xbox. So I wondered if Sony went to Microsoft tomorrow and said, hey, you can put Game Pass on our system. If Microsoft look around and be like, do we need to make hardware anymore? Like, is that the thing that's really keeping them in the hardware game, is not being able to put Game Pass on the PlayStation? Because if you think about it, if they were able to do or get Game Pass just as it is now on the PS5, or just PlayStation consoles going forward in general, in their mind, they don't have to make the hardware anymore, the high-end box, the console market box, and they can still push their subscription service, which is supposed to be why the hardware exists in the first place, at least the way they've been touting it for the last half decade now. So I don't think Sony's going to do that anytime soon, if ever, but it is interesting to think about that potential alternate reality where Game Pass did launch on the PlayStation and maybe Xbox, as hardware anyway, did go away. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card, or maybe you're still looking around for some early holiday deals with things like Black Friday coming up. I'll leave a link below with maybe some that you missed. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.